Hi, everybody. I'm John Chrastka, Executive Director for EveryLibrary and the EveryLibrary Institute. This is EveryLibrary Live, Banned Books Week 2024 Festival. We are on Friday. We've had a heck of a week already, talking to a lot of humans who care deeply about the culture of reading, the joy of writing, the big issues facing our day. We heard earlier today, as part of our publishing industry panel, we're having a continuation of that today. We want to talk not just about the joy of writing, but how do you get yourself published? How do you get yourself into the stream? How do you get your ideas or your stories out there to the world? I'm very happy today to be joined by two wonderful colleagues and to talk about that process. Matty Dalrymple, Kevin Tumlinson. We're going to be talking today about ALLi. The ALLi is the Alliance for Independent Authors, as well as their work as well. So let me set the stage here and tell you about who these nice people are and this organization. And then we'll get into this conversation about what it means to be not just a writer in your own time, but a writer who wants to put their bread out on the water and have it seen out by the world. So first off, Kevin Tumlinson, he's an award-winning and best-selling author. He's not just a master storyteller, but he's a globetrotter. He draws inspiration from his incredible travels. As an independent author, Kevin has harnessed the power of self-publishing to reach readers worldwide with his captivating novels. And Matty Dalrymple, known for her thrilling Lizzie Ballard series and the suspenseful Anne Kinnar novels, Matty's a powerhouse in the independent publishing world and the independent author world. As the indie author, she's a dynamic force, sharing her expertise through podcasts, books, and consultations. And her role as a campaign manager for the Alliance of Independent Authors, ALLi, underscores her commitment to empowering fellow indie authors. Now, we are going to be chatting about ALLi. I want to learn a little bit more about the organization myself, though I've run into it from time to time with other EveryLibrary Live events. But ALLi is the Alliance of Independent Authors. It is a global membership association for self-published authors. It's a nonprofit. Its mission is ethics and excellence in self-publishing. Everyone on the ALLi team is a working indie author. They offer advice, advocacy for self-publishing authors within the literary, publishing, and creative industries around the world. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for this opportunity to hang out a little bit and learn about your work, but also the broader craft.
Thanks for having me here.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. So, ALLi. Now, Matty, it says that I know that you're a campaign manager. As an active member and a representative of that group, how is the organization aligned around support, and how has it influenced your journey as an independent author? I'd love to hear some examples of how ALLi works to resource the indie author community and also to make a difference for its members.
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity to share that. I always like spreading the word about ALLi. And I think the best way to understand what ALLi does is to talk about the four major campaigns that it spearheads. That's what I'm in charge of as the campaigns manager. One of those campaigns is self-publishing for all. So that is the idea of encouraging diversity and accessibility and freedom of expression, appropriately enough for this event, for authors around the world, and to help them learn the self-publishing skills they need in order to succeed in the indie world, and also to remove physical and mental and financial barriers to self-publishing. So that would be the Self-Publishing for All campaign. The second of the four campaigns is Open Up to Indie Authors. That is encouraging players in the publishing and literary industries to include indie authors in their programs, their events, their festivals, their reviews, their listings, their prizes. And ALLi does work to support that effort. The third of the four campaigns is ethical self-publishing. You had mentioned that ethics and excellence in self-publishing is really the mission of ALLi, and we like to provide our members and others in the indie author community with the tools they need in order to operate in an ethical manner, giving them the information they would need to make ethical choices, and also putting out a standard code of conduct for authors and also self-publishing services who agree to comply with an approach of transparency and courtesy. And then the final of the four campaigns of ALLi is profitable self-publishing, and that is raising the average income of indie authors and poets through creative business practice. And so many of those efforts are things that are available to authors regardless of their membership status. And then on top of that, ALLi also offers a number of member-specific benefits to the people who join us.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, taking those in reverse order, I mean, most people would think about it as an income stream, but the fact that there's this ethical and standards-based approach means, I think, that there's more opportunity for revenue generation, and the marketplace is so potentially cutthroat. The marketplace is so potentially difficult. I think taken together, those 4 pillars are very powerful.
Yeah, I like talking about the ethical self-publishing before the profitable self-publishing, because ethical self-publishing is something everyone can do. Profitable self-publishing is something that is a goal that people can choose or not to choose. I mean, there are indie authors out there who are interested in putting out a memoir of their family, and their audience is primarily their fellow family members and their friends, and perhaps profitability isn't a primary goal for them, but publishing ethically should be a goal for all authors.
There's a framework around censorship and book bans right now that needs to be explored, and that is that the idea that it's not just the right to read. The freedom of speech is really the right to tell your story, and yes. There is some very powerful conversations happening, mainly in the courts, to that effect. Several of the lawsuits that are happening, particularly in Florida, are talking about that right to have your story at least told, if not necessarily purchased. And that concept around the freedom of speech, that in America, and I know ALLi operates internationally, there's different national charters and international conventions around this, but in the United States, it's a very American principle to say, let's put it down on paper. Let's put some bits and bytes out of the ether, and let's have our voice at least able to be heard.
Yeah, I think that indie publishing is a great vehicle to support that, because there are certainly books that people have written that for whatever reason, it could be a marketing reason that traditional publishers just can't take it on because they don't know what to do with it. They don't know what shelf it would go on. And indie publishing is a fantastic option for people to have the opportunity to get their words out there without relying on a third party to do that for them.
That's extraordinary. Kevin, when we were putting this panel together, Matty suggested that we bring you in. She's in leadership at ALLi, but I'm wondering if you are one of the people that, when she talks about making it, in self-publishing, finding your own self-direction. I mean, how has the self-publishing indie author life been for you?
Good. Overall, I mean, there's been valleys as well as peaks, but gratefully more peaks than valleys. So it's been overall pretty good for me. And I'm happy to see other people get into it as well.
For sure. The work that ALLi does, I mean, are you a longtime member? Are you relatively recent to it? Do those 4 pillars resonate with you?
They do. I've been a member for quite a while, and have had a professional relationship with the organization since way back. I used to work with a company that worked pretty closely with ALLi, shared data, things like that with ALLi. Those 4 pillars are essential to me. Most of the time when I'm talking to other authors, there's a genuine and strong focus on the profitability side of those pillars. And that's understandable, because all of us kind of get into this hoping that we're going to be the next John Grisham or Stephen King, but the integrity and the ethics side of this is something we don't talk about enough, which is one of the reasons why I chose to start supporting ALLi way back, because there's a lot of shady practices out there. One of the things that I have utilized ALLi for is finding my own partners for my business, so that as I'm publishing, I can rely on these services to actually help me and benefit me, rather than simply take advantage of me. So that is a huge draw to that organization, and it's something that I don't think most authors really think that much about. Like we think about it if we get screwed, if we think about it if we get caught up in a scam, but we don't think about how can we help prevent others from getting caught up in those things, and how do we, what are the practices that we can put into our daily habits and daily practices that are that can kind of continue that sort of ethical approach to publishing, and help expand the options that we have out there. That's something I think we should all be thinking about.
No, I'd love to hear from both of you a little bit about what some of those challenges are. Besides, of course, writer's block. Everybody's got their own discipline about how many words do you put down every day. How much do you throw out later on? How much do you rewrite? I'm not suggesting that those are where the barriers are. Once you have a manuscript, getting to that point where you want to see it go up and out to the world, what are the barriers that you individually, but also you collectively through ALLi, look to obviate by this kind of collective action?
Well, I'll take a crack at that and say that there are quite simple ways to get into indie publishing. There are platforms out there that make it quite easy to get your books out onto all the same retail platforms that traditionally published books are using, and that can be done very simply. I think that some of the challenges start coming about as an author's career expands, or is not expanding as quickly as they want to, and they're looking for ways that they want to pursue that. And Kevin had mentioned the fact that ALLi offers guidance in terms of vetted publishing professionals that anyone can look at the ALLi partner or reviews, the service reviews, I'll say, and see whether this is a reputable or not a reputable company. And I think that's super important. The two resources that I always point authors to are the ALLi reviews and also Writer Beware, a blog from Victoria Strauss, who is great at tracking down the do-badders and sharing information about them so that people can be on the lookout for those kinds of things. But that's especially important, I think, for authors because, the work we do is the work of our heart, and we want to get it into the hands of readers. And so we can be very susceptible to approaches by unethical services or unethical platforms that are offering to help us do that. And sorting through that is something that an organization like ALLi can help to do.
Mm-hmm. I published 2 textbooks through specialty library trade publishers, and it's interesting because I have a co-author and I had an editor who gave some nice top level direction and then a light touch at the end. I didn't feel like I was alone, and I know that sometimes when you're out there and having a trade press behind the work also means that they have a catalog that goes out to faculty at universities that teach library sciences. I have no aspirations to write what you guys are writing. I have no story to tell other than textbooks. That's actually my niche.
You say you talk about feeling alone. I mean, it can feel like that, especially as an independent in this industry. But what's been interesting, ALLi is a good example of this, but there are more. I go to a lot of writers conferences worldwide. I speak at a lot of them. There's a community in the indie publishing world, and it runs deep, and you find them in some of the places that you're probably aware of. You can find them on Facebook or Twitter. Twitter is changing. Twitter is becoming a little toxic, but
Twitter has its charms.
It has its charms. But there's also ALLi also provides means for people to kind of find and connect with each other. So that loneliness gets kind of mitigated by what we're building here. ALLi's been a big part of that, but there's the community itself. We're pretty innovative when it comes to, how do we connect with each other, share resources, share opportunities. It's kind of, it warms your heart to see it. A lot of times, I literally talk to hundreds of thousands of authors every year. I mean, it's an ongoing conversation for me. And I'm seeing the industry change in some dramatic ways right now. There's a real shift because for the longest time we were there was a strong focus on quantity, on rapid release, that sort of thing, getting as many books out as possible as quickly as you can. And because of AI, there's been a shift from that because AI can do that. So if you want to differentiate yourself now as an author, you need to start focusing more on quality over quantity. And so that's changing the game. And I'm seeing players come in and out of the services that are out there, long-term. I was with Draft to Digital for like 7 years, and I left almost a year ago to the day. No, I guess that's not quite true, but pretty close. But I was just one of several. We've had a lot of players kind of shift, go do something else, do something new. So it's an exciting time to be in this industry, is the point I'm trying to make. That's what all that rambling was for.
No, that was a good ramble, man. That was a good ramble. You hit on a couple interesting points there. I want to come back around to the marketplace, and we're a library organization here at EveryLibrary. We spend a lot of time working on things like library funding measures on the ballot. We do a lot of work on libraries and censorship, libraries and discrimination, anti-discrimination campaigns. But we also look at that culture of reading conversation. We know really clearly from the research that we've been trying to support here at EveryLibrary and the EveryLibrary Institute that about a quarter of all reading right now in America, in the United States, is sourced from a library, and that's any genre. We can talk technical papers all the way to cookbooks and kids books, and that quarter of all reading, 22% or so after the pandemic, is coming. About 3/4 of it is coming from an established house, but a quarter of it's coming from independent presses and independent authors. And I'm just wondering, how is the library community post-pandemic responding to the indie author community? And could we be doing anything to make it easier and better for indie authors to find at least an audience or an ear from the library community?
Well, I'm going to give a shout out to Draft Digital because I am always a huge proponent of indie authors pursuing opportunities in libraries, and I think it's a dramatically underutilized platform for people to get to. I think that when authors think about, their dream of being an author, it's going into, their favorite local bookstore or a big chain and seeing their book on the shelf. But I think that people overlook libraries in terms of their marketing and distribution efforts at their own peril. And it can be very profitable. It can be beneficial for libraries and profitable for the indie authors because I think players on both sides understand that it doesn't make sense for an indie author to charge the same amount to a library to have a copy to lend out as it would to sell to an individual person. And so it's possible to charge quite a bit more for a copy of one's book than you would to an individual consumer, and yet also as an indie author charge much less than traditionally published authors do, which is a big benefit to the author and libraries. And Kevin, I know you know much more about the details of this than I do based on your work at Draft Digital.
Yeah, and I should say, I'm still a huge fan of Draft Digital after all this time. They're amazing people. One of the things that I used to say when working there, I would do interviews like these, and everyone at Draft Digital came to love books because of the library. Like every one of us discovered reading and a love for reading at our local library or at our school libraries. And so we were big supporters of that. And they rolled out a whole series of resources and tools for indie authors to get into libraries, first digitally, but with the print stuff, you can get in the audiobooks and all that stuff. That's all available now. The great thing about what we're seeing, I think indies are starting to realize, because there's a lot of, I guess, I don't want to call it misinformation per se, but there's a lot of misunderstanding sometimes when it comes to libraries. I know in the traditional side, a lot of times they're seen as competition, which is patently crazy to me. I think indies are embracing the reality of this quicker, which is most people discover when they discover a book in a library, that's their gateway. And eventually when they have disposable income, they already know the writers and the books that they love. And so they go find those and they purchase those. So, if you're going to, it's like a partnership, I love working with libraries. I've talked at several libraries, done signings and things. They're great places to connect with the community. And I think I would be honored if someone came to me and said, look, I discovered your book because I found it in the local library. It would be an absolute honor to me. I'd rather you do that than find it at half price books for sure. Because at least I get paid for something, So.
Well, I get that. Yeah. It's interesting, that discovery process. Some of the survey work that we've done alongside the Freckle Project.
Yeah.
the survey work in Freckle Project asked the question of where did you get that book, you know? That again is about 22% post-pandemic from the library. Other sources though, online booksellers, bricks and mortar booksellers, but then the friends and family side of it, it cannot be underestimated. It's not hand sales. It's that transactional, the love of reading that transacts between people, you know? And those are some powerful moments, whether it's in a book club at a library, the kismet of discovering it, you know, in the stacks or even in a well-built, you know, app. I'm glad to hear that the indie community is able to interface with the library community like that. I think it's extraordinarily important because that culture of reading right now is certainly under attack. And I don't know how the indie author community is feeling right now about how crazy America's gotten around censorship and book bans, because the library community right now is back on its heels. You know, we're doing everything we can to help fight against those campaigns of censorship, which tend to be campaigns of erasure. But if we have a First Amendment framework that says the freedom of speech is the ability to publish, as well as the opportunity to read, I have to imagine that there's some conversations happening in the indie publishing, indie author world that I'd like to hear a little bit about how people are feeling.
I'm going to say something in half jest.
Okay.
Controversial.
Yeah.
But I love it when they ban a book. And here's why. And I'm half joking, but the reason why is every time they have these book bans, every time you hear a news item where these dozen books have been banned, you can walk into any bookshop in America and find a stack of those books with these defiant signs. Usually they're on sale, and it just prompts people to go read more and more of those. That said, of course, book banning, I hate censorship in all forms. The conversation happening in the indie space is like we all feel that way. Some of us are I'm kind of hoping maybe my books will get banned someday. It would be record sales. But the reality of it is we all know what that means. It's someone saying you can't see this story because I say you can't see this story. I am, as an independent, in every form of that word, that rakes at my soul, and I will push back against that with everything that I am. And I know most indie authors feel the same way. We're probably become the biggest voices for getting out and reading at that point.
Yeah, there are some household names out there who are getting banned right now, and you think to yourself, how dare they? How dare they put Judy Blume, you know, on the ban list?
Judy Blume, of all people. I mean, I think Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing. I mean, that was probably one of the Super Fudge. I mean, these were the books that I grew up reading, and it made me fall in love with reading. And so the
number of books and the number of books about personal identity, personal stories, biography, memoir, the number of books that tell truth, you know, in their storytelling, that get banned. I mean, that don't have the household name attached to it. That's where I think the real offense is.
Yeah, I think that the way I hear this spoken about in the indie community is that those kinds of actions are what make some people choose indie, because they don't want a gatekeeper between them and their readership. And it's exactly those stories of personal experience that isn't going to fit neatly into a traditional publisher's marketing plan that are the lifeblood of the indie publishing community.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I want to take a minute and thank you for doing this conversation about the indie author community and ALLi in particular. I want to come back around with one or two more closing questions in a minute, but I also need to ask you a little bit about what you're working on today, because you're both indie authors. You're both doing the big stuff right now, telling your stories. And I'd like to just check in about what's both hot off the presses and what's coming off your. I mean, I always picture the typewriter, you know, the big long scroll. You know, I still can't help it. You know?
I got like 3 of them behind me over here. So.
Yeah, Kevin, what are you working on right now, man?
You know, ironically, I'm working on something that's more in the traditional publishing world right now, which is almost sad to say, but I have a I'm not comfortable revealing all the details just yet, so forgive me. But I'm co-authoring something with a New York Times best-selling author at the moment. I just handed him the first 3 chapters about 20 minutes before this call, so that's going well. And I've always got 3 or 4 books kind of stoking.
Mhm.
You know, I've got it.
Now, was your most recent one The Forgotten Ruin?
The Forgotten Rune was my most recent. That's in my Dan Kotler archaeological thrillers. That's the
Mhm.
one that I'm most known for. So that one came out a couple months ago. I think I'm gonna say July.
Yeah.
I don't remember anymore, and it doesn't matter because it's still doing fairly well. So happy
Well,
to see it out there.
from my perspective, I think a good archaeological thriller, blends fact and fiction.
Yeah.
It's got the little bit of the edge to it. Sometimes we're like, well, let's see how far we can get with fact.
This one I pushed a little further into that sort of almost fantasy realm than I normally would. Most of my books are very grounded.
Mhm.
And this one had some supernatural, a sort of supernatural element to it. And apparently that's something my readers really love. So I'm probably going to start adding a little more of that to the soup over the next few books.
Well, that's real cool. You know what, Kevin? I'm going to keep you on my Rolodex because I've got a straight academic archaeological nonfiction that I'm looking to do in either December on an EveryLibrary Live or January. Just
very
because
cool.
I want to nerd out about the world's oldest cities, but I might drag you back in for that conversation.
Well, I can hold my own with Göbekli Tepe for hours.
Yes, you can. So. Absolutely. Yeah, good man.
The oldest city at this point.
That's the one. So, yeah. Matty, let me check in with you a little bit. How's things going with the indie author project that you've got?
Well, for the Indie Author, which is my nonfiction platform, I just had a book come out that I co-authored with Michael Laurent called From Page to Platform, How to Succeed as an Author Speaker. So we're very excited about that. And then on the on the fiction front, I have my most recent books that have come out have been in the Lizzie Ballard thriller series. So this is the first of the books in that series, Rock, Paper, Scissors.
It's a very nice cover, by the way. That's really hot.
Thank you. I just got those redone. The covers I had earlier, I loved, but I found that they did suggest that they were a little more fantasy-esque than I think was appropriate for the theme. And also they were beautiful in print, but difficult to see in thumbnails. So this is one of these learnings that I had as a marketeer that you need to have the cover be sort of a billboard for your book. And I thought this was equally beautiful, but a better billboard. And so that is the Lizzie Ballard thrillers. My other series is the Ankner suspense novels. And the first of those is The Sense of Death. And all my books have a theme of what happens when an extraordinary ability transforms an ordinary life. And so I'm all about the supernatural aspect. And Kevin, I think you're making a good decision to go more in that direction.
Good.
Yeah, the world is a magical and wonderful place. We're sometimes just too busy to look around and notice it. So yeah. Well, you've both been wonderful people today, sharing about yourselves and your experience in this business, and sharing about ALLi as a good resource and a good partner to indie authors. I wonder if we can wrap this up today with a little bit of advice to somebody who might be sitting there staring at the keyboard, or they've been staring at the keyboard for a long time and they have a pile now that they need to take out, or whether it's a pile of paper, an old floppy disk, a thumb drive, or they're hesitating to press send on something.
My first bit of advice is stop staring at the keyboard. The screen is where all the writing is happening.
Yeah, well, I got my touch typer over here, man.
If the advice I offer is the tried and true. I mean, first of all, read everything. Don't just read the genre or the style of writing that you're trying to put on the page, but read literally everything you get your hands on, and that includes the bad stuff as well as the good stuff, by the way, because you can spot more of what you're doing wrong when you get better at figuring out what other people are doing wrong. So that's a great way to train yourself and become a better writer. So there's some pat advice for you.
Oh, that's really cool. Matty, what would you tell somebody who's looking to take that leap?
Well, if they have a book ready and now they're looking more at the publishing side than the writing side, my advice is always to make sure that the steps you take and the plans you have align with the goals you have. And so there are no good or bad goals, but the actions you take and the plans you make are going to be very different if your goal is to get your lovely memoir out to your friends and family in an easily accessible format, or if you want to retire on the earnings from your books. Both great things to do, but you're going to take two very different paths. And so there are lots of resources out there, including at ALLi, that will help you understand the path you want to be pursuing, and then what are the appropriate steps to take to pursue that.
That's really fantastic advice from both of you. Thank you so much. I was joking with my wife the other day that you know, we're buying pizza this week on the royalties from my textbooks. You know, so yeah.
Nothing
Hey,
wrong with that.
congratulations, man. I mean, for most of my early career, I was buying ramen noodle for the proceeds of my books.
Well,
so.
you know, we got one pizza a quarter here, so you know,
Yeah.
it's not bad. Maybe if I spread it out more, Kevin.
Yeah.
Again, folks, thank you to Kevin Tumlinson and Matty Dalrymple for this conversation about the indie author experience. This has been a very nice conversation, and I'm very glad to bring them into EveryLibrary Live, our Banned Books Week 2024 edition. It's Friday morning. We have a few more wonderful conversations with the closing keynote tonight as well. We are going to ask you for your consideration, team, about donations to help support our work here at EveryLibrary. It's everylibrary.org/2024 to help us move our mission forward, supporting libraries, opposing book bans and censorship. It's been wonderful again to the both of you. Thanks so much for today's conversation. You be well. Bye-bye.
Thanks, John.